All right. Well, it was fun while it lasted. Caleb Williams, the number one overall pick. Bears get to enjoy and just soak up all the glory because Mark, I got to read this headline to you. Chicago Bears Caleb Williams had awful practice, completed just 3 passes in a drill. So it's over. It's over.
I
Clearly it's
I
it's
saw
all
that. Did you read? We actually got to read more than the headline. Both
No, I know.
Rome Odunze and Keenan Allen were not available for that particular 7-on-7 drill.
That may have a little something to do with it, but clearly this is showing us that Caleb Williams is just not an NFL quarterback.
Yeah, right. I do love how DJ Moore came out after that press conference and did say, hey, growing pains.
Yeah, you got to. Everyone has bad practices, but it's funny. I mean, most people are joking about how I think there was that CBS broadcast where the guy was saying, "All right, this just in, your favorite rookie player actually stinks on the first after the first day of practice, and so got an injury and all of this stuff."
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, people make a lot out of OTAs and make too big of a deal out of it. Most of the media now has caught up to making light of this whole thing, but there are still a lot of fans out there that just blow this stuff way out of proportion, and it's kind of crazy.
I say it, I think every year we've done the show, but I'll say it again. It's a good time to reiterate it. As we head into OTAs in this training camp world, the thing that you should get the most riled up about as a fan, is an actual injury. That is something you should always keep an eye out for. Is there an actual injury? And then is there an actual position battle for a starter? All right. Is there a veteran guy who your team signed and maybe paid big money to, brought in, and you're all of a sudden it's man, is your one or two team reporters you trust saying dude, that undrafted rookie is pushing this guy.
Yeah,
those are to me the interesting things. All the other stuff about so-and-so threw a bad interception, or so-and-so fumbled the ball 3 times, or so-and-so is a little overweight, or whatever it might be, or so-and-so Lamar Jackson, the best shape of their life, he lost weight. All of that is what we like to call over coverage. There's too many reporters. There's too many cooks in the kitchen. They've got deadlines. They've got stories to write. They've got clicks to get. So focus on injuries and then legitimate position battles. Those things are going to matter for your team when it actually comes into playing the games in September.
Yeah, and it's one of those things too where, I mean, we're all just hungry for football, so a lot of times we just want to talk about it. And so that's, it's
true.
It's part of what makes football so great is that people are having narratives forming this early on. And it's another thing that kind of, makes you scratch your head sometimes too, but we'll take it overall. We have something on the show to discuss every week here, 52 weeks out of the year, give or take. And so, no complaints here. By the way, we're getting ready for our 5th season on
of
the
coverage,
show, if you can, or 4th season on the show, I should say, of coverage, because we did 2020, 21, 22, 23. No, 5th. This will be our 5th NFL football season. That
we
we'll
started during the COVID year. That was the first one we decided to
that
cover.
That was it.
Aren't we brave? Aren't we brave?
We and about 1.6 million other Americans decided this is the perfect time to start doing a podcast. We're pent up in our own homes.
We're so brave.
Let's get after it.
We're so
really
brave.
But,
everyone's got to be. Not everyone can be a pioneer.
Exactly. Well, we're happy to be back here on the show after yet another brief break. Talking, obviously, the NFL schedule has been released since we last spoke, so we're going to get into that. Talk Bears, Steelers, overall NFL schedule, some tidbits that we pulled from that as well, and a couple news and notes, of course, as we enter this pivotal moment with OTAs and training camp then coming up in just a little bit. But let's get to it. The NFL schedule reaction. All right, soon enough, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll get to find out what emoji we best relate to when it comes to our team's schedule, the Bears and the Steelers, and the overall schedule, of course, as well. A couple minor notes I want to get to, Mark, before we dive into this thing. Antonio Brown filing for bankruptcy, and I actually think the narrative around this has been really good. It's been a lot of people actually saying, like, having the discussion about, him as a person and whether or not he's okay, because obviously there's not going to be many tears shed for this guy, given
Yeah.
all of the stuff that's happened and the things that he has, some terrible things that he's done to other people and out in the public eye. Um, but, there have been some serious conversations about, once again, looking back on that Vontez Burfict hit that seemed to change everything with Antonio Brown. All of the stuff started to cascade from there. And I know he's making light of CTE. He's got his CT ESPN thing that he's trying to lift off the ground. But unfortunately, Mark, uh, and you never say never in this day and age, but this guy just seems like there are not really going to be many opportunities for him to recoup much of anything, because he has tried to do his, rap career and tried to do all of these other things that haven't fully panned out. Now he files for bankruptcy. It's just been a spiral for like 6-7 years, it seems like.
Yeah, it's another sports, I mean, he's been a sports tragedy for a long time. This was like the next thing you're waiting for. Like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. The cop showing up to the house, the pool video with his dong out, all the stuff, the way he
Throwing
left
furniture off a
the
balcony and injuring
yeah.
a child. Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, okay. And now he files for bankruptcy. So there you go. There, bingo. Like the bingo card is complete. Yeah, I mean, good luck to him and the people he owes money to, because you're probably not getting it. And what he's, the only thing that you do feel for him and the people around him is like, he's not an old guy. Like he's got his whole life still ahead of him, and it's a great, great warning to these NFL players. When the money's coming in, the money's good, but when you stop getting those weekly checks, and now it's like, hey, you have only what's left in your bank account to live off of for the rest of your life. If you haven't invested smartly, or you haven't, put money away, or you don't have another career you're about to jump into, whether it's an analyst or media or whatever, yeah, like you can be not even 40 years old and you can be completely broke and bankrupt. And I think at one point in time, I think I read that he had made 80 million in his career.
80 million. Yeah.
And that goes quick. Obviously, there's taxes. That's just like the gross, right? Versus
Sure.
the net.
So we'll
So
say
it's
35 to 40.
you
Somewhere in
know what
that
I mean? But
ballpark.
at some point in time, yeah, he probably brought in, after you pay your agents, everything, closer to, probably $40 million. And where'd all that go? Well, it's gone, and he's got you're right, not much prospects ahead of him. We'll see.
Yeah.
I don't really shed a tear. I'm like,
No.
you start with that story, and I was little caught guard. I was like, oh, I didn't think this would be news worth touching on, but it is.
Yeah,
It is sad. I mean, you do feel, but like, he's such a jerk and such a,
Well,
and I
yeah,
don't want to
he
go.
doesn't garner much sympathy. It's
Yeah.
more, I think it just lends credence to the overall discussion of like, man, like some people really need help out there,
Yeah.
and he's been a guy that we've seen signs. It's kind of like the Kanye conversation. It's like, yeah,
Well,
Kanye's
yeah.
made so much money, but it's like, man, we're watching people in real time, kind of just deteriorate and go off
Fall
the wall,
apart.
and it's like, shoot, it's
It is
that's
watching
never
a
like a
train wreck,
fun
and there's
thing.
nothing you could do. There's nothing you
Right,
could do.
right. Yeah, yeah. So it's just one of those warning signs. But I digress. I mean, speaking of Pittsburgh, a former Pittsburgh Steeler and Antonio Brown, Pittsburgh won its bid to host the
Yeah.
2026 NFL
Love
draft.
that.
So that's pretty cool. It is interesting that the NFL draft now, for several years in a row, it's going to be held in very like blue blood, cold weather cities. It's going to be probably pretty chilly next year in Green Bay. Of course, it's
Yeah.
probably in April still going to be snowing, and then Pittsburgh going to be pretty chilly too. But that is kind of cool. They're getting back to their roots, and
Yeah.
I mean, I heard, I don't remember who said it. I think Matt Williamson, who covers the Steelers, is like, the NFL, of course, we bang this gavel all the time, is so good at marketing and so great at finding out how to appeal to their fan bases. And this is just another iteration of like, okay, they've done the big flashy stuff. They've gotten the Super Bowl in LA. They've had this like, new stadium in Las Vegas. They've built and expanded. They've got the Taylor Swift stuff. And at the same time, catering to their base, catering to the blue blood franchise of the NFL here with the NFL draft, where they know they're going to get hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Steelers fans, of Lions fans, of Packers fans attending and making this the spectacle that it is. So, incredible stuff, and it should be a good time.
Like we said, Detroit showed up and showed out. They set a record, and I'm sure the people of Green Bay are going to try to break that next year. They're going to literally have to bring people in from not their town because more people were at the Lions thing than I think live in the city of Green Bay. So they're going to need those Packer fans and people to show up and go to the draft. And I'm happy for Pittsburgh. I think it's a cool thing that it goes down the road. I think it's a well-oiled machine, so just keep it rolling. And you're right, it is a really nice dichotomy the NFL has found where they're able to do things on this grandiose scale for their high-end clientele, and then also say, hey, we're going to Detroit. And next year we're going to Green Bay. The year after that, we're going to Pittsburgh. And so you fully expect them to be in Baltimore like the next year. You know what I mean? Or trying to think of another
like Cincinnati or
they've already been to Kansas City. Didn't they already do it in? Didn't they already do it in Philly too? Was it in Philly or no? Not yet. Was it?
Yeah, I think it was.
I thought it was in Philly after Chicago,
obviously,
and then Philly.
Yeah,
I think it was Chicago, Philly, then Nashville. So no, it's exciting. I'm happy for Pittsburgh. That'll be awesome.
I am curious about the infrastructure situation, primarily with Green Bay, because how are they going to get that many people? How many roads are there?
There's not enough hotels. I mean, there's I can tell you
not
that
enough hotels, and they're going to use fields, probably so many fields for parking. I would imagine just drive into the corn.
Well, you have to do it at Lambeau. There's nowhere else in Green Bay to even do it. Like, there's not even like a sick theater. I think there is like a minor league, NHL team in Green Bay that has like a stadium,
like an ECHL,
a fairly new stadium near Lambeau, and like the big brewery they have up there, Titletown Brewery. Like there is some newer things, but even then, I don't know if that's where you're going to hold it, like to try to get in like record break. It's just going to have to be in Lambeau. It's going to be like fill up Lambeau and then fill up and they're going to build the stage in one of the end zones. So what if Pittsburgh will do? Pittsburgh will have something, and they'll show out for sure.
Yeah. Pittsburgh's got a lot of hills and winding roads, so that'll be tough too. But they've got, they're the city of bridges. They have 80.
They should just hold it on a bridge.
Yes.
Make the draft picks walk across a bridge.
That'd be pretty sweet, man. Imagine Mac Jones making the draft walk down the bridge. Watch out for those cracks in the foundation. For sure.
Exactly right.
All right, let's get into the schedule. A pretty cool time of year where we get to react to our teams to schedule how things pan out and look at some of the primetime games. That's always fun and kind of dissect things. So I'll queue up the Bears. If you're watching, this is probably a good episode to watch. We'll be kind of sharing the schedule on the screen, but we'll walk through it for those listening as well. So adding this up here, pulling up the Bears schedule, and pretty solid, entrance into the year, I'd say. Not terribly difficult, but not the easiest thing either. I will say defensively, it's pretty I like my initial reaction was, okay, Caleb Williams will be getting some help to start the year in terms of the defenses he's facing. The Titans aren't terribly scary. Texans are good. They've got a good coordinator, but there's not, outside of Will Anderson, there's nobody where you're like, oh my gosh, terrified of. The Colts kind of the same thing. They're decent and solid. Rams are, a kind of a ragtag group, although they played pretty well last year. Then Panthers and Jacksonville. So really, up until the bye, I'm not overly concerned about Caleb Williams being under just this immense pressure. And so that was my initial thought. At the same time, they're going to have to score points because they are playing some decent offenses in this grouping here. And, they can't just take it lightly and expect to win 10-7 either. So that was my initial thought. Now, how about you?
My initial thought was, thank God it's not Sunday Night Football week 1 against Green Bay, like in Green Bay. Like, I can't handle that.
Because instantly it's the pressure of up. Caleb, if you lose this one, then you're setting the precedent for losing to the Green Bay Packers for the rest of your career.
I mean, that was the Bears last season. You start with Green Bay, you ended with Green Bay, and it would just it was depressing. I mean, that loss.
Did Fields start his career was his first start against Green Bay?
No, remember he had to go in for Andy Dalton against the Browns like halfway through the first quarter because Andy Dalton pulled his hammy or whatever running out of bounds. And then I don't remember who his actual first start was against after that.
It wasn't Green Bay though.
So that was my initial thought. And then my thought was, wait a minute. This is really, really workable. like really workable. So if you want, I can kind of go through it and kind of talk through
absolutely.
my initial thought was, so like, I love starting off with Tennessee at home. Again, Tennessee new head coach. They're going all offense. They bringing in, Joe Burrow's offensive coordinator in Cincinnati, Callahan. And so this is a young team with very low expectations in Tennessee that has a young quarterback. And so Caleb gets to be at home against a very, very weak defense to start at a noon game. No pressure, the primetime slot. I love that. I think it's a great start. Then you go on the road to the Texans, which it's going to be a very like a litmus test type of game, right? You expect to get off to a 1-0 start against Tennessee at home. You go on the road against the Texans, and that is Sunday Night Football. So they're saying, hey, we give you a week. Now, week 2, we're going to put the number 1 pick on the prime time, get that Bears viewership. Houston, 4th largest TV market in the country beyond after Chicago, New York, and LA. And so it's like, all right, this should be a big time primetime game. Upstart Houston. I don't expect the Bears to beat Houston in Houston, but what that litmus test will be is, hey, can this offense score and be competitive with what we saw last year with, by the end of the year, one of the most explosive quarterbacks and offenses in the NFL. So you go, all right, week 2, but through week 2, I have them kind of at 1-1. That game then against Indianapolis becomes really important and really unique. We just don't know as of right now what to expect out of Indianapolis because we didn't see Richardson at all. And they got rid of Gardner Minshew. So it's not even like, oh, well, we know at least if Gardner Minshew's playing, depending on what Richardson's health is, if you expect him to start the year or whatever, you at least know what you got with them when they had Gardner. You just don't know what you're getting with Shane Steichen and this Indianapolis Colts team. You expect them to be explosive. You expect them to be a team that's going to come out and be really creative offensively. But again, on the defensive side of the ball, as you said, nothing that scares me. On the road, I expect the Bears to get a win there. I have them at 2-1 through 3 games. You come home, and they got a real test at home against the Rams team.
This is the season up to that point.
Yeah, real bummer for the Bears that they get the Rams at home in early part of the year in September. You'd love to have seen that game in December or January. Feel like you get a weather advantage. And so I expect that to be a loss. It's Sean McVay, better coach, better quarterback, and a team that was in the playoffs last year. I expect the Rams to beat the Bears at home. Bears are 2-2 through 4. Then this is where it gets really exciting. You can beat up and destroy the Panthers at home. There's no reason why they shouldn't destroy the Panthers. They blow out the Panthers at home. You're 3-2.
Boost.
Yeah, you're 3-2. You go to London for a really tough game against the Jaguars. I expect them to lose against the Jaguars in London. Again, travel, coach, quarterback, the Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence. Now, this is his 4th year of going to London. Like, this is old hat for them. Yeah. And so the one advantage they do have is that they're both going to be, if they leave for London at the same time, they'll both have the similar rest. It's not like, because the Jags are going to play back-to-back games in London. So it sucks for the Patriots who play the Jags in London the next week, because the Jags will already be, acclimated to the time change and all that. They have a huge advantage over the Patriots in that second week. So maybe the Bears could catch them sleeping, but I expect them to lose to the Jags. I have the Bears at a reasonable 3-3 into the bye week.
Absolutely.
Now, could that be 2-4? Could it be 4-2? But I think I'm being fairly conservative in saying a win at home against Tennessee, a win at home against Carolina, a win on the road against Indianapolis, and then 3 tough losses against 2 playoff teams last year and a team with a coach and a quarterback who are kind of on a must-win type of year, and they're on the road again in a foreign country against a team that has been there before. I think it's reasonable to say 3-3. And now you start to say, if you're a Bears fan, this is where the crucial part of the season is. You have an early bye. I don't love the early bye traditionally, but in this case, I think it works in our favor.
After
you're 3-3. Yeah, you reset and you say to your young quarterback, hey, how's it been going? Let's take stock in what's going on. You get some guys healthy. You're going to have some injuries, right? And then you have 5 winnable games. I think the Bears go on a 5-game win streak here. I really do. At Washington, at Arizona, those are must wins. When you circle them at the beginning of the season,
agreed. Absolutely.
Those are must wins. It's a must win, just like the Panthers and the Titans. So through those 4 games we talked about so far, I think there's 4 must wins. Tennessee, Carolina, Washington, Arizona. You're better than all 4 of those teams roster-wise. Your coach is just as good as all of those coaches coaching-wise. your quarterback is just as good or better than all those quarterbacks quarterbacking wise. So you have a roster advantage and a coach and a quarterback neutral or slightly better leaning. You've got to win those 4 games. Then you have the Patriots at home. That is a must win. So you have 3 must win games in a row because, again, you have a quarterback advantage, you have a coach equal or advantage, and you have a massive roster advantage. So there's a 3-game win streak after the bye. I have the Bears at 6-3, and then home against Green Bay. Is it crazy for me to say the Bears can then beat Green Bay at home when they're already on a 3-game win streak, flying high, rolling in hot? I don't think it's crazy for me to say they split the season series with the Packers. They win their home game, especially if they're on a 3-game win streak. Bears go on a 4-game win streak. Then the Vikings come to town, and the Vikings come to town when you haven't left town in 3 weeks, and you're on a 4-game win streak. I think the Bears win it, go on a 5-game win streak. They beat the Vikings here. All of a sudden, you're at 8-3. If you can make that happen, and now you could still be 8-3 if you went 4-2 pre-bye, right? And then you didn't go on a 5-game win streak, but you went 4-1 in this stretch against Washington, Arizona, New England, Green Bay, and Minnesota. So either way, I think 8-3 is really plausible, where then you say to yourself, I only got to win 2 more games the rest of the year to make the playoffs and feel good, right? So where are those wins coming from? In my opinion, they're coming from at Minnesota and on the road against Seattle. So I have the Bears as a 10-win team. I think the 10 wins that are easy for me to predict in the schedule are those 10. Tennessee, Indianapolis, Carolina, Washington, Arizona, New England, Green Bay at home, Minnesota, Seattle. If those are the 10 I feel like that's the way they get to 10 wins, you're not telling me that maybe they could find a way to split the season series with Detroit? Maybe. It's possible. So there could be 11. But I think if you're predicting any more than 11 wins, I think you're going way too over your skis with this Bears team. I love this Bears team. I got a ton of confidence. But I think that window is really, I don't see them winning less than 9. I don't see them winning more than 11. I'll split the difference and go 10. And then probably something will go different, right? They'll lose to Tennessee, but they'll beat Houston, right? So something will go different in that world because of that's just how it works. But I think 10 wins is extremely plausible. The thing that concerns me is you go on that big win streak that I'm predicting. Say they win 5 in a row or even 4 out of 5 in that streak after the bye. It could really come crashing down to earth at Detroit for Thanksgiving and then at San Francisco. Those are 2 teams that are way up a huge level up in class, in roster, in coaching, in quarterback play. And so that's concerning. Like, right, you just don't want to get totally embarrassed. I would love to see them go on a 5-game win streak and be 8-3, but lose a tough game on the road on Thanksgiving to Detroit. And then play a really close game, and maybe McCaffrey breaks one loose at the very end of the game for the Niners to kick a field goal and beat you. It's how they lose those 2 games against Detroit and San Francisco after Thanksgiving and the week after Thanksgiving that to me will say if this Bears team will have a chance to actually win something in the playoffs or not. I think they get in with 10 wins, but how they compete against Detroit on Thanksgiving and San Francisco after Thanksgiving will tell me, can they, and again, this is all if health, no giant health issues, can they actually compete in the playoffs? Crucial for them to sweep Minnesota. They're better than Minnesota roster-wise. They have a better quarterback than Minnesota, no matter who Minnesota starts. And they have a massive deficit of coaching against Minnesota, but I think their roster versus Minnesota's roster, especially on the defensive side of the ball, makes up for that coaching error. And the Bears get the Vikings later in the season. So by the time the Bears play the Vikings again, if all health is considered, I will fully believe more in my quarterback and my coach and my coaching staff to handle my quarterback versus Minnesota and their quarterback. So that's my thoughts. I do think they split with Green Bay. I'll say they win at home, lose on the road week 17. That'll be a tough one because most likely Green Bay and the Bears will be vying for playoff positioning. That could even be the difference between being like the 4 seed and the 6 or 7 seed in the wild card that last week of the season. So That'll be a really nerve-wracking game, but I'll give Green Bay. I think Green Bay's roster is great. Their quarterback played great to end of the year. Great head coach. So I'll give them a split and be as honest as I can about that. But that is my official thoughts and predictions. We don't know what these teams will look like after week 3 or 4. Injuries will start to pile up. You just don't know. But if you go on paper says anything less than 9 wins would be a real disappointment for this team, the way this schedule is shaped and who's on their schedule.
Yeah. I also agree that the most pivotal stretch of this season isn't the final 6, but the 5 after the bye. I agree because that's really going to shape a lot of things for them, because if they somehow go 2-3 during that stretch post bye, then they're staring down a gauntlet of immense pressure. And like, then all of a sudden those 2 home games are must wins, and then also that road game against Minnesota and probably that final game against Green Bay become must wins as well. And then you're just setting yourself up for a disaster. The only thing that does worry me is those 3 road games in a row, even though it's sandwiched with the bye, which helps. And personally, I'd rather my team get a road game out of the way after a bye versus having a home game after a bye, only because I like my home game advantages. I don't need the double advantage of the bye and home. Like, I'd rather get, 2 mini advantages throughout the year versus one bigger one.
That's a great way to think about it.
So I do like that part, but the Washington Cardinals thing does scream kind of trap game worry issue, especially the Cardinals one, because Kyler Murray and company did start to gain some steam towards the end of last season. And now with Kyler Murray, a completely full, healthy offseason, we can see the full iteration of what Jonathan Gannon's team is supposed to look like. And they've got Marvin Harrison Jr., who will be 7 games into his rookie campaign at this point. Like, that could be a situation where Caleb, we're going to have to get into some sort of shootout here. And that could be a problem too. But overall, I agree. I think I probably would have predicted them at about 10 wins this upcoming season too, which should be in the NFC good enough to get them a wild card berth in the playoffs. And even if they don't make the playoffs, a 10-win season, you'll take that for Caleb's first year.
Yeah, be huge.
Yeah. Especially if he can toss 26 touchdowns and 3,800 yards, or get close to like either of those 2 Bears records, and just look competent, good, stay healthy. That's a big win for the Bears.
Yeah, I do agree with you. The bye is really tricky because it's like leave for London, come home. You got to get reacclimated on your bye, and then it's a really surprisingly important game that'll actually have a lot of emotion against Washington because of the 1 versus 2
DC. And
and he'll have be all the ticket sales and all that, and it's 1 versus 2. That's going to be a very big, already both those guys have circled that game on the schedule. Just as they circled, I'm sure Caleb is hoping that Drake May's starting for New England by the time they play them as well. Circle that on the schedule. And then Kyler Murray is the guy that Caleb, it's like, well, he's compared most to Kyler Murray and Patrick Mahomes. So that is, a weird, it's a weird stretch where it's like, I know my team has a better roster than those 3 teams, but there's a lot of weird, interesting storylines that could kind of cloud up those games. So on paper, I'm looking at that as those are 3 must-win games. But if you're a Washington fan or an Arizona fan, you're looking at the Bears coming to town and going, that's a must-win game as well. Like they see it, so it's you got to flip it there as well. That's why I do think it's crucial to at least be 3-3 going into the bye. Would I kill for them to somehow be 4-2 or better? Yeah, because if they're 4-2 or better, then it's less pressure. It's less pressure to go 5-0 in that stretch. You could go 4-1 and have a mistake somewhere. Someone has to miss a game for a hamstring or whatever, and you're just not the same. But if you are, let's say 4-2, and you find yourself, maybe you upset Jacksonville somehow, and you are 4-2, then you open up the gates. If you can go 5-0, all of a sudden you're 9-2, and then there is that weird pressure of like, man, could this be the number 1 overall seed? And yet then you have this gauntlet of Detroit twice and San Francisco in 3 out of 4 games in a row. Like that is a tough stretch. And
It's oddly similar. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Finish that thought.
no, there's a lot of again, it doesn't matter. Does any of this matter? No, because by week 1, knock on wood, but so-and-so, I'm not even going to say a name, but so-and-so could tear an ACL, an important player on an offense, defense, doesn't matter for any team. And this all goes out the window, like Aaron Rodgers last year. But this is why, one of the reasons why we love football is because this is digestible for us to predict and talk about. When the 162-game MLB season comes out, no one in their right god-awful mind sits there and goes game by game and tries to predict winners. You can't do it. You don't know rotations.
You go by months, basically.
Yeah.
Like, can we go, 15 and 5,
Can we win these 5 series in a row, or whatever it might be? So that's what makes football special. So I know this is a silly exercise, but it's a fun one, and I can't wait for you to do it now with the Steelers and your Steelers. Man, oh man! Talk about a really tough second half stretch.
Terrifying.
Do you think the Bears 3 out of 4 games is tough? The Steelers, it's like backloaded completely.
Yeah, I mean the Bears' final 6 games is a really tough stretch. I like looking at it on paper because even though the Vikings aren't that great, they're still a division opponent, and you're like, well, shoot, that's tough. And
it's on
Seattle
the road.
Is not among the worst teams in the league. They're not great, but they're a middling team, and they're scrappy, and they can pull off a win. That wouldn't be shocking to anybody. So that's a tough stretch of games, especially the one non-division game being San Fran, and the fact that the Bears' first division game comes in week 11. So does the Steelers.
Yep.
And so
it's backloaded.
That's very crazy. And just to drive home the point real quick, and how even a 2-game stretch can completely change the course of a season. This exact 2 back-to-back games here with the Cardinals and Patriots for your Bears was the 2-game stretch last year for the Pittsburgh Steelers that they completely unraveled, fell apart, and lost to the 3-win Patriots at the time. Just an absolutely atrocious loss that put them on a 3-game losing streak against all teams they should have won. And you were fighting and clawing at the very end of the season to even make the playoffs, and they didn't get it done, or they barely got it done, and the rest is history. But so I'll transition to the Steelers schedule here as well, and maybe I'll be able to kind of broaden this a little bit here, make it. I'm not going to be able to, but hopefully you can all see it. It's the best one I got to showcase at the time. But yeah, the first several games, going into the bye, I feel fine and decent about. The bye week coming in week 9 is one of the best bye week placements that I've seen for the Steelers in recent years. And so that's really nice. I always like it to be smack dab in the middle of the season, or, a little bit later on in the season. So week 9, great bye week there. But yeah, everything after the bye, which the Steelers get Washington after the bye too. So we'll have that in common, and I'm not the only one saying this. I think you'll agree. And a lot of media pundits have said the same thing. This is the worst 8-week stretch
it is
that I have ever heard of ever in the history of the NFL. This is incredibly difficult, or 9-week stretch, I should say, really. You get Washington after the bye, and then you got 6 division games, all AFC North, which you have all your 6 division games too, but I would argue the aggregate of Baltimore, Cleveland, and Cincinnati,
it's a
much more
division.
difficult grouping. And then you don't get any reprieve with the 2 non-division games, because it's the Philadelphia Eagles, who were Super Bowl contenders last year, Super Bowl runners-up the year before, and then the Kansas City Chiefs, who obviously are reigning Super Bowl champions. But I'll walk through this schedule one by one, and we'll work our way through it. But that stretch is just absolutely brutal. So obviously the hardest part for me is figuring out what this team is even going to look like, because I have no idea. Is Justin Fields going to be the quarterback? Is Russell Wilson going to be the quarterback? I'm going to operate under the assumption that Russell Wilson's the quarterback for the season. I do believe that at some point Justin Fields will be playing, but it's too hard to predict when that happens. And so I'm going to go with just uh, the gut feeling that Russell Wilson, starts the year and plays every game, even though I think Justin Fields will end up playing sometime. And I also am going to go with the assumption that their run game and overall offense is an improved one from the Matt Canada era because I trust in Arthur Smith. I think they've made upgrades to the offensive line. The only downside here is I don't know what their wide receiver room is going to look like. To me, Pittsburgh is going to need still to make some sort of move this offseason and make a trade because George Pickens and no one else is basically their wide receiver room right now. I think if you went back and you asked the GM, Omar Khan, if he envisioned this being the wide receiver room on May 24th, when he traded Deontay Johnson to the Carolina Panthers, I think he would tell you no. I think he would have assumed that they would have been able to get one of those free agents or had a trade done. But that's the case right now. Roman Wilson, their rookie, is probably going to end up having to be the number 2 wide receiver, which doesn't, make you feel great because he wasn't a high pick. But nonetheless, that's where we're at, and an improved defensive unit too. So I go into that, with that knowledge, starting the season off. So week 1 at the Atlanta Falcons, kind of a revenge game here for Arthur Smith. Feel comfortable about that. I think that's a win. They're in the dome, but at the end of the day, Kirk Cousins is also, with a new unit, new team, new coaching staff. So I think that's a wash between the two teams. Russell Wilson, new coordinator, new group to work with. So I think what it boils down to is roster, and I think the Steelers have a better roster. So they get the win on the road and a better coach here as well. So they get the win on the road. And then it's a road trip to Denver. Look, this sucks. I would have loved for this to have been one of the home games. We knew going into it was going to be a road game. Road games in Denver, especially early in the season, are brutal because of that altitude. I'm gonna say this is a loss. As much as I think they have advantages across the board, it's back-to-back road games. It's, Sean Payton. I know that, Mike Tomlin does well against rookie quarterbacks. I hope they win. I think it'll be a close game, but I'm going to give the edge to Denver just because of how brutal of a transition this is to playing the altitude at that point of the season. They should win, but I'm going to say this is going to be one of those games where I'm like, okay, if I'm trying to be realistic, I'll throw one of those wins I think, should be a loss, and vice versa. So 1-1 going at home against the Chargers. And if this was a road game, I'd probably pick Chargers to win. I feel comfortable at the home opener for the Steelers here. Would they be able to control the line of scrimmage? Jim Harbaugh is, a ground and pound, win in the trenches kind of guy as well. So it's going to be kind of a mashing of those two. But I think if you put our defensive line and offensive line up against theirs, I think ours wins out. Now, they do have the better quarterback. That could obviously be a big key deciding factor, but I'm going to give the edge here to Pittsburgh and make them 2-1 going into another road matchup against the Colts. They lost this game last year. I'm going to give them a victory this time around. Mike Tomlin does really well against running quarterbacks. He's just really good at game planning against them. And so with Anthony Richardson really in his rookie year, given that he's only got, 4 games under his NFL belt?
It was like 4 quarters under his
Or
belt.
yeah, it was, you're right. It was even less than that.
It was like
he got
3
hurt initially, and then he toughed it out, and then got hurt mid-game, the second game.
By week 4, it was over, but it was, I think he'd only played in like 2.5 games.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. So really, he's not going to have much experience to this point. And I just feel confident that the Steelers defense is going to be able to handle that offense pretty well.
We
And
both get the Colts early, and I'm thankful for that. I think we're both thankful for it. We don't want Anthony Richardson to feel comfortable. You don't want to play him by the time he's like rolling and feeling comfortable.
Yeah, and you could argue that's the benefit against the Broncos early and the Falcons early too, is that Kirk still getting his, feet underneath him with this new team, even though he's an experienced quarterback. And then Denver, it's probably going to be Bo Nix. Like, that's a rookie making his second start of the year. So that is the good thing, is that they get some of these quarterbacks and teams early in the season. And then they go home to Dallas. So this is a game that could go either way. They're 2-2 at this point. I like Pittsburgh. I think they're a better I like Pittsburgh in this spot, I should say. I think they're a better unit, and they're at home. But I'm going to go back and give the Cowboys this game because it's just one of those games that, the Steelers, find a way to lose late. And I'm going to put them, with their backs against the wall now at 2-3 going on the road to Vegas. I have them winning this game at Vegas. It's in a dome. They should be getting their, bearings underneath them now as Arthur Smith, and hopefully correcting the wrongs that have happened here early on in the year. And it's just an inferior opponent. I'm perfectly fine saying that in Vegas. So we're 500 back home taking on the Jets. Aaron Rodgers comes to town. I'm going to give us a win here in this one. Beating Aaron Rodgers. They have the better quarterback. We've got the better defense, I'd say, overall. Way better offensive line. Better run game overall, too. They have the better running back. We have the better unit. And so I think this is a game that's like close, but the Steelers control the line of scrimmage, get a key turnover that wins them the game. And one of those wins I'm going to give Pittsburgh that might be a loss, but I've already given them a loss that maybe should have been a win. Back home again for the only situation where they've been back-to-back home games so far. The Giants take care of business there too. I feel comfortable about that with the Giants coming to town. You're back home for a second straight week, feeling good. So now we are 4-3, right, at this point, or 5-3, I should say, at this point. And going into that bye week. So 5-3 seems like a pretty conservative and reasonable situation for me. Then they go on the road to Washington, just like your Bears after that week 9 bye. Crucial to get a win here. I mean, this is you got to win coming off the bye to not only put yourself
and again,
in a
inferior
6-3
roster
spot, but yeah, I mean, you need to be healthy and get this momentum going into this absolute brutal 8-game stretch that you have ahead of you. So I'm going to give them the win here, but I'm not going to lie, I'm a little bit worried about that
so
potential trap
6-3
game,
then
Washington.
So you have them at 6-3, and then it's the brutal stretch. Can you find a way to 10 wins?
Right. And that's the tough part is I think you would love to be able to go 500 during this stretch. And so to me, unfortunately, I feel because of this stretch, I feel the cap on the Steelers season is 10 wins. I feel the floor is 8, but then again, Mike Tomlin, never a losing season.
Yeah.
I don't feel that he's going to be 8-9. So to me, 9-8, 10-7 is the room that I put him in here. But the home game against, so you win against Washington, home game against Baltimore, crucial to get a victory there.
Yep.
Because you only have 3 more home games the rest of the way, 2 of them against division opponents. You got to get this one against Baltimore. And to be fair, since Lamar Jackson has started games against the Steelers, he's 1-7 against Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
So assuming he's healthy here, Pittsburgh has had Lamar Jackson's number. And so I'll give them the edge here. They go to 7-3 on the road to Cleveland. Again, this is a tough spot. I'm going to just have them going 3-3 in the division because I just think that's just how things normally shape up. And so I'll have them losing on the road to Cleveland in this one to go to 7-4. Then it's on the road at Cincinnati. Are they going to lose 2 games in a row? I don't think so. I think they rebound and win on the road in a tough environment to go to 8-4. Then it's back home with the Browns. Here we go. We got our 9 wins, 9-4. On the road at Philly. That's 9-5. I don't feel great about that game. That situation. Philly is likely also playing with everything to win, or they have everything to play for still, and the Steelers will be in the same position, and they just have a better roster than we do. So I'll give them the win. So what are we, 9-5 at this point, or was it 9-6? I lost track.
Now you're 9-6.
Now 9-6. I'll give them a loss on the road at Baltimore. We're 9-7. No. It was 9-5. So now we lost at Baltimore is 9-6. Then we've got the final 2 games of the season, both at home, thankfully, the Christmas Day game against the Chiefs, and then a final game against Cincinnati. So you're 9-6. Are you going to go 0-2 and go 9-8 on the year, or can you split these final 2 games and get to 10-7? That's the
Yeah.
whole hope here. To me, the best chance, I just don't see them beating, sweeping Cincinnati, especially with a healthy Joe Burrow. So to me, the hope is that Kansas City has already locked up the 1 seed as of Christmas, or
Yeah.
at least doesn't have everything to play for during Christmas, and maybe sit some guys, and we pull out a rare win. Now, the good thing I said, final 2 games are home, so we'll hang our hat on that. I'll have them split this. I don't know which game it's going to be. I'll say they beat Kansas City only because Kansas City probably is sitting some guys at this point on a Wednesday, and then losing to Cincinnati the final game of the year. But 10-7, we both have our teams at 10-7 of the year.
Yeah.
But it's a tall order to go 4-4 in that final 8 games. It's a
So
really
I have
tall
a
order.
couple.
So those first however many games is absolutely crucial for the Steelers to, at minimum, to say 6-3 is a minimum is an understatement. That's that they have to be there.
Well, and that's to me what's going to be so unique about this Steelers season. Now, I truly think the Steelers are one of the 3 toughest teams in the NFL to predict for this year, because we just have no idea what Russell will look like in Pittsburgh. And he's going to be tested early with a giant emotional game for Arthur Smith on the road, right? And then a massively emotional game for him on the road.
And for Sean Payton,
against Denver. So it is like, if he is bad through those 2 starts, and if Pittsburgh somehow goes 0-2 and they don't look, and he doesn't play well through the first 2 starts, they could easily quickly become like red alert panic mode, right? Like, don't you think, like, if Pittsburgh's 0-2 and their offense and Russell Wilson has maybe thrown through 2 games 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, less than 400 yards passing, and is like completing less than, like 60% of his throws, and it's obvious he's not performing, like, it's panic mode, right? Like, especially if Justin Fields looks good in preseason. There's so much that's interesting about Pittsburgh. Like, I'm so glad
so many things can happen.
You're going to have this is going to be such a fun season for us, for both of us, for different reasons, because I think your team is one of the 3 hardest teams to predict. They're going to be, every week is going to be like that roller coaster of the emotions. And then for my team, it's the number 1 overall pick. It's evaluating Caleb Williams, the future, and all that thing. I truly believe when you look at the schedule, though, regardless of who's playing quarterback, you look at games like, to me, Denver's a must win. Indy's a must win. The Raiders is a must win. The Giants is a must win. Washington is a must win. Like, they have only 5. Like, the Bears, how many did I list for? The Bears are like 7. Realistically, the Steelers only have like 5 games where I confidently can say, wait a minute, this team is better than this team. I don't care where they're playing or when it is. You have less games in that regard, because I think we're both honest about it. Cleveland, Cincinnati, and Baltimore are all equal or better than in the majority of the categories for compared to the Steelers, right? And then you're out of conference schedule. You add in Philadelphia, who is maybe the second best team or third best team in the NFC, and they're your in-state rival with a giant emotional chip on the shoulder. And I don't consider Atlanta a must-win, or that's an easy circle, that's an easy one, because Atlanta's actually got a really solid roster, and they have a quarterback in week 1 who I just don't know what I'm getting, but I say the same thing about Pittsburgh week 1, no matter who's starting. So that one is one of those, you'd want to circle it, but I can't put it in the lock, you got to circle it game. So I got to be honest, when I first went through this before we went on the air, and just got together, my initial, just go into it, win, loss, I had Pittsburgh at 8-9. And that was, in my assumption, Justin Fields starting post-bye. I think that Pittsburgh is not above 500 going into the bye. then that's real trouble for Russell Wilson. And I could see
Oh yeah.
Pittsburgh and Mike Tomlin knowing that post bye, they have to be more dynamic. They have to be better. They have to give their fans something. But it also could save Justin, just in the sense that maybe they are just at 500, and then you maybe win that game against Washington. You get blown out ugly at home against Baltimore. You give Russ one more game, he loses again. Then it's like, all right, now for the final 6 games, we're going to throw Justin in there. Maybe he's our savior. Maybe they save him knowing you might need that at the end of the season, just to hopefully keep your hopes alive going into that final stretch of the Bengals twice, the Eagles, the Chiefs, that really brutal schedule. So talk me through what you think. You said you think Justin Fields is going to play. My guess is it will be after the bye or in that final stretch where it's like, good God, we need a spark. We didn't win enough games to be comfortable going into this stretch. Now we're in Hail Mary mode.
Yeah, I mean, I think you would preferably, I would want him playing earlier than that, because one game before that 8-game slog doesn't seem like enough for me to, inspire confidence to get Justin Fields rolling. I would prefer if, it all depends though, as you said, like on how Russell Wilson performs. If he's kind of just like hanging
what's
in
your
there,
leash?
that's going to
What's your
prolong
leash
things.
with Russell? If you're
I
0-2
mean,
and he's at fault, is it get him out?
It's it probably is, because you're not paying him anything and you have a talented quarterback sitting behind him that can do things within the system that I think work really well. I mean, I think Justin Fields is kind of tailor-made for an Arthur Smith type offense, heavy play action,
Yeah.
uh big time throws down the field, and using that athleticism, uh in the backfield. So I would say it's a fairly short leash for Russell. So yeah, if they go 0-2 and it's because of him, then I would say Chargers at home, or Colts on the road. Give
Yeah.
Justin Fields
Because
a shot in the dome there. But I just don't like, after the bye, Justin Fields then all of a sudden starts
yeah.
playing at Washington, gets the 1-game sample size under his belt, and oh, by the way, okay, now get ready to play Baltimore's defense,
Yeah.
Cleveland's defense,
Yeah.
Cincinnati's defense, Cleveland again, Philly. Like, that's
It's
brutal
brutal
to like get any
But
sort of
I do.
confidence going.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. So maybe best case, but you can't afford. It's hard, because then you're saying you can't afford to start 0-2. Like, you've got to find a
No,
way to
yeah,
at least be 1-1 with those games.
for
So
sure.
I think the key, in my opinion, the key for Pittsburgh is going to be offensively. How do you play? If you're 0-2, but Russ is playing good football, and it's like, hey, we scored 24 points against Atlanta and lost, and we scored
Yeah. If it's
27 points
fluky
against
stuff
Denver and lost, and
Sure.
we're running the ball, and I haven't thrown a backbreaking, you know what I mean? Like, don't blame me if it's the defense or something else. But if it's the offense goes to Atlanta, only scores 10, and then goes to Denver, only scores 13 in losing efforts. The one thing Justin Fields will be, no matter what, with his bad plays and horrible mistakes, he's instant offense. And he's
He'll be
just going to
dynamic.
He's going to go out there, and you're going to at least have a chance for your offense to move the football, whether it's a giant throw or it's a giant run. So it's going to be fascinating. I can't wait. Then there's I know you have a stat to move.
Yeah.
You want to move on to. I think it's really fascinating. Do you mind if I talk about one team in particular here really quickly before you jump into it?
Sure thing, of course. Let's go
So
for it.
I wanted to touch on one of the things I think is really interesting right now is there's a lot of a talk and discussion. Like, you're trying to find those storylines, like, oh, what's going on? Who can we talk about? It's the offseason of the NFL. I think the Miami Dolphins are a really fascinating team, right? Playoff team last year. It's everyone saying you got to pay Tua. I think Miami would be so smart, so smart to do the Joe Flacco Baltimore Ravens thing. Don't pay him. You can't pay him. And if the worst thing that happens is he leads you to a Super Bowl or an AFC title game, and then you have to pay him after the season, maybe more, because it's like, hey, he won you all these games. Well, I'd rather sign up for that than pay him big now before the season starts. Because that Jared Goff contract, it reset the market for those guys, right? If you're paying Jared Goff now $50 million, okay? And we both agree, I think, Jared Goff is the best of those other guys, the Tuas, the Derek Carrs, the Dak Prescotts, the Kirk Cousins. I think we agree Jared Goff is like the leader of that group, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to pay one of those guys who we think is worse than Goff more than 50, even if it's 50.5, right? You got to get him above Goff. It could end up being an absolute disaster for Miami because the schedule is really not workable, and it's not a great schedule for Miami because you start at home against Jacksonville, no advantage of weather, right? And a Jacksonville team that is absolutely in prove-it mode. You then get the Bills at home. You think, early September, advantage of weather. Well, it's prime on Thursday night. So no blaring down sun, anything like that to be an advantage for you in that. Then you go on the road to Seattle. That is the longest road trip possible within the continental United States, Miami to Seattle. You come back home for some winnable games against the Titans and Titans, and then you're on the road against the Patriots, at home against the Colts. So workable. But then the season ends Jets, Texans, Niners, Browns, Jets. Well, actually it ends Packers, Jets, Texans, Niners, Browns, Jets. So the worst thing you can do for your franchise, for the health of it, the health of your fan base and everything, is pay a guy big money and then the season doesn't go the way you want it to go. Because that's what happened with Kyler Murray, right? You paid him the big money and then it was shaky, then he got injured. And it's like, and now ever since then, it's been, should we draft a guy? Do we even believe in Kyler? It's a little different. You paid Joe Burrow giant money, and then he got injured, but you'd already seen Joe Burrow play in a Super Bowl. That's why he got paid the big money. Tua, all we've seen from him so far is, okay, last year he didn't get concussed, and he got embarrassed on the road in a playoff game. Like that's what you've seen. And now you're going to pay him more than $50 million. And then you have that type of year where I could easily convince you to go through game by game that Miami would be really lucky to find their way to 10, 11 wins. And then you're stuck with $50 million. It's different in the NFC. Jared Goff in the NFC with that roster, $50 million, when everyone's already locked up and paid. You already paid your wide receiver. It's not like they have to pay anyone else for a couple years. And the guarantees for Jared are way lower. He's not in that top 5 guarantee. You're not paying him $200 million guaranteed like Joe Burrow, like Patrick Mahomes, like Deshaun Watson. It's a very different contract. So I just think that Miami is fascinating to watch as far as how they handle the Tua situation. If I was Miami, I'd be very blatant with him. I would tell his agent every day, watch the Joe Flacco, go back and look at Joe Flacco when they won the Super Bowl with the Ravens. That's what we're hoping for from your client. We want your client to win us the Super Bowl, and then we'll pay him any amount. He'll pay him $60 million a year. We don't care. Doesn't matter then. Doesn't matter what you pay him if he wins the Super Bowl. Yeah. Well, that's what we need from your client to get him to the desired money he wants. And you know what? Then we'll give him even more money than he wants. But if he can't do that this year, well, then we'll have some really tough contract talks next year, if we even talk contract at all. And if your client wants to hold out, be our guest. I feel we have the AFC's version of Kyle Shanahan as our head coach, and we'll just go get a guy off the street, and I think we'll be fine. So I really do believe Miami is they have to stay strong right now. That schedule is tougher than it looks, and you've got to stay strong. You cannot pay Tua $50 million before he wins you something. If he gets to a Super Bowl this year, even if he doesn't have to win it. If he gets to the Super Bowl, if he makes it through Burrow, through Allen, through Lamar, through Mahomes, through Watson, through C.J. Stroud. If he does that, then fine, pay him. You know what I mean? But we've got to see him do something. Yeah, you just can't do it. And it's the same. I'd argue the same thing. I'd argue the same thing with the Cowboys and Dak and with Green Bay and Jordan Love. Green Bay's roster is set for any quarterback to come in there, and they have an offensive coach. I like Jordan Love. We said Jordan Love played really well at the end of the year. He impressed us both. But it's the same thing. I would tell him, watch that Joe Flacco and Ravens tape. We would love to pay your client what he's asking for. We'll talk again after we win the Super Bowl next year. Make sure your client's a big part of that.
Yeah, I mean, I want to see who the main quarterbacks of free agency will be next year. Who's going
We
to
have to
be
look
the
that up.
Kirk Cousins, the Derek Carr, the Aaron
Yeah.
Rodgers, or Russell Wilson?
I'll look that
I
up real
think it's
quick while you
probably
tee up
Dak.
this stat. Yeah, it probably is.
I think it's probably Dak. And you, what if Miami? You insert Dak into Miami's offense? Do they get worse? I don't think so. I think they probably get a little bit better even.
No, but I don't know. What you're going to pay Dak on the open market is what you'd have to pay Tua anyways. And then it's like.
Yeah, but it would be a shorter term deal, most likely. You wouldn't have to pay
quarterbacks who are slated to hit the market include Trevor Lawrence. Now, they could pick up his fifth-year option.
He won't hit the market, yeah.
Jordan Love, Tua, now, and Goff just got signed, so this is old. This is back in early April. So Jordan Love, Tua, and Dak, the three guys just talked about. So again, ride it out. And I know next year's quarterback class isn't great, so that helps Tua, Dak, and Jordan Love.
Right.
But if I were those three guys too, I would all be trying to get paid now because I think all three of them have tough schedules this year. It's not going to be as easy for them. Right. So they're going to push to try to get paid. But if you're those teams, stay strong. Stay strong.
I love Warren Sharp's analysis when it comes down to the NFL schedules and NFL teams. Like, he does such a good job of laying out his entire
no emotion.
And it's all based on analytics and different just unique ways of measuring the success, and I think things that really do matter. So in referencing what he does over at sharpfootballanalysis.com, it's great stuff, and it's, most of it is free to view. According to him, based on multiple factors, including obviously projected win totals, but strength of schedule, rest advantages. These are the 5 teams with the easiest schedules this upcoming year. Number 1, the Atlanta Falcons. Number 2, the Los Angeles Chargers. Number 3, your Chicago Bears.
Yeah.
Number 4, the New York Jets. And number 5, the New Orleans Saints. The 5 hardest schedules in 2024. Number 1, my Pittsburgh Steelers. Number 2, the New England Patriots. Number 3, the Cleveland Browns. Number 4, the Baltimore Ravens. And number 5, the Minnesota Vikings. Now, obviously, this is just one facet of, evaluating how an NFL team does. And that's why I'm going to share another thing that Warren Sharp pulls together. This is a really interesting thing that, hasn't been studied, as far as I know, outside of Warren Sharp. Now, he's done studies dating back to 1990 on these. He hasn't been doing it since 1990, but he's evaluated schedules dating back to 1990 about rest advantages. And this is, to lay it out there very simply, if you are a team playing on Monday night and your opponent played on Sunday, your opponent for the following week played on Sunday, your opponent gets that Monday to prepare while you're playing another team, right? So that's one extra day of prep work that your opponent
a rest advantage
has over you. So it's a +1 advantage then for your opponent and a -1 for disadvantage for you that following week. He has compiled the total net advantage days and disadvantage days for every team this season. And he has the Baltimore Ravens. Now, mind you, they had the 5th or 4th hardest schedule, but they have a +16 net number of days advantage over their opponents throughout the year. So they have 16 days of rest compared to their overall opponents.
Basically, to think about that and it's, in the simplest terms, they're playing a lot of Sunday games versus teams that are playing a lot of Monday games.
Yeah,
so like or they play on Thursday and then they don't play. They're playing it. You know what I mean? Like they're getting. It's crazy. It's an incredible way to look at it, because the Ravens, while they have a really tough schedule, they're always going to have more time to prepare for the next opponent than whoever they're playing.
Exactly. Yep.
And with a good coach like a Harbaugh and a good quarterback like a Lamar, that's huge.
Exactly. And it's not so much as you could see on this chart here on YouTube. It's fantastic. But go over to sharpfootballanalysis.com and check it out because it's really cool to look at. He's got all 32 teams in here. He was saying, based on his data dating back to 1990, a plus 16 net rested edge is by far the largest rest advantage in
Wow.
the last 34 years that any team has ever had. And he suspects, given that there were 14 game seasons prior to that, and just how the NFL
Be
schedule
ever.
worked, that it's the largest rest edge advantage in
So we
NFL
don't know
history.
how that's going to help play out. We just don't. It's
Yeah,
statistical anomaly a little bit.
it is. It is.
Now,
And San Fran last year, now mind you, they were super, successful team, had Brock Purdy do his thing. Last year, San Fran had the largest disadvantage. They also have the largest disadvantage this
so it
season.
didn't impact them last year.
Right. And they are minus 21. Minus
Where are my
21 days.
Bears at?
And you can see there, like, all of these red blocks are each individual week. So there are 3 games where they are at a minus 7-day advantage, meaning that they have to play a team coming off of a bye 3 different occasions. That's
Wow.
brutal. That's tough. And then on another 3 games, they have a 3-game disadvantage, which is either them coming off of or going into a Thursday night game, and not having a bye the week before, or
Whatever it
playing
might
on a
be.
Wednesday, or just all weird stuff. So that's brutal because you could see the reason for Baltimore's advantage isn't because of all the pluses, although obviously they're there. It's that they only have a minus 1-day disadvantage twice. The rest of the year, it's either a wash or they're in the plus column. So San Fran is in the minus almost all of the year. They only have an advantage twice. So
Where are my
it's just
Bears at?
your Bears are at a +5. They are at a
All right.
respectable +5, which
I'll take that.
probably also helped play into their strength of schedule and all of that stuff. They're at disadvantage by 3 games twice, but that's it. Otherwise, it's -1. And then they have a +7 with the bye, and they have a +3-day advantage twice throughout the year.
So everyone should get a +7 unless you're playing also someone coming off of a bye, right?
Correct, and I don't think that that's the case really at all. I think everyone, well, okay, here for Tampa Bay, they have a +4. So perhaps their bye, the team played a Thursday night
Or something like that.
the
Yeah.
week before, so they
Yeah.
get an
Only
extra 3
4.
days, right? So that's probably what that is. Um, it looks like Indy only has a +1, and that's it for the year. So they must
What
also be
about
playing a team coming off a
What
bye.
about Washington? Because Washington's playing the Bears. The Bears or Washington gets them. Like they take the Bears, get Washington after their bye, and the Steelers get Washington after their bye.
Yeah, so that must be the -7 and the -6 here for Washington.
Yeah,
But then Washington gets a +7, so they're playing a team off of
Okay,
Washington's, playing a
they
team
get it
off of a
back a little
bye,
bit.
whereas that other team is not, having a bye the
Yeah,
week before.
and
So
I think
yeah,
this is
for 95% of the league, they all get at least one +7 advantage. Some are
in.
+6, some are +8, but
It's really funny because week to week it does matter. It feels like it matters for your team when you're like, crap, we're playing the team now, we're down. But I've never thought of it as the whole total of the season.
Yeah, me neither. I
But when
didn't
you
know this
do,
existed.
when
I
you
wish
think
I had
about
seen this
that,
year's
you
bye.
think about it like overall, Baltimore should consistently always have a health advantage too over their opponent because they have the rest advantage also is a health advantage, right? Because it would be we have extra literal, not only like physical, we have physical rest, but a mental preparation edge. So it's like my team's got more time to mentally prepare for your team, but also my body should be more rested almost going into every game.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. That's crazy. That's cool.
And
Sharp is the best.
he noted that the swing between the Ravens +16 and the 49ers -21 is the worst differential between the best
So
and
we'll
worst.
see. If it
Yeah.
didn't impact San Francisco last year, but who knows? It could play catch up on it here now that you're constantly playing with a little less rest and a little less time to prepare.
37% of all the games being played this year will feature at a game in which at least one of the teams has a rest advantage over their opponent. That's the
So
most in NFL history. Now,
a
it's only
little over a
37%.
third.
That doesn't sound like a lot,
Yeah.
but that's 101 games where
Yeah.
one of the
Think about
teams
it.
has an advantage there.
In a game, in a weekend, that's about like 4 games where you can literally point out where you're like,
Yep.
oh, okay, 4 of these games that team's got a legitimate advantage.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
So,
that's
yeah, I
only going to
just
get
thought that was
wilder
really
because
interesting.
it's only going to get wilder because the NFL is now doing the Wednesday game and Christmas. Like they're doing that
Yeah.
Friday game in Sao Paulo. They're willing now to just take over the schedule. So the NFL is, I think, saying, listen, we're trying to make it as fair as possible, but also we're an entertainment product and we just don't care.
Yeah, it's always going to be the entertainment value and the dollar ahead of, what's good for the specific
Good for the
teams.
players, yeah.
And yeah, and I mean, obviously Roger Goodell lately has like really come out and forecasted that they are going to do an 18-game season. It's
Oh,
inevitable.
it's got to wait for the CBA. It'll happen.
And so with the second bye week likely inserted in there, I wonder how that
They'll
plays
hopefully be
into
able
these
to make it more
Yeah.
fair at that point. You're going to equal it out.
Or will they not be paying enough attention to it? And will there be a team like the Ravens who get a plus 28?
Well, you got it. Then
rest
Warren
advantage?
Sharp's got to go knock on the NFL office. Like, all right, you got to do something here.
Yeah. Get them on board and help weed this out a little bit. But no, it's a fun exercise. Really liked that. Is there any one particular primetime game? I know we didn't really like delve into the entirety of the NFL schedule or anything, but was there like one primetime game that you were like, oh, that's one that I'm really excited for this year?
Well, I mean, I'm really excited to get a chance for the Bears to be back on Thanksgiving. I think Bears-Lions Thanksgiving is like one of my favorite things when it happens every year. And so that I love that the Bears are playing on Thanksgiving. I also, I'm really excited for Jets, Eagles, Sao Paulo, Brazil Friday night because that's the type of game where obviously the Eagles are another team that has so much at stake this year, and they need to get off to a hot start because they were the worst team in the league last year at the end of the season, and they ended up in the playoffs just because they'd won so many games early. But Nick Sirianni coaching for his job. They had Saquon Barkley and some other big time signings. And so you say to yourself, this is a team now that's got to get that mojo back going. And they started in Brazil against Aaron Rodgers. We just have no idea what to expect from against Green Bay, a team that was extremely, extremely hot to end the year. And again, a quarterback who's going to be playing for a big contract. So I love that. I can't wait for that. And that's going to be, a lot of fun, I think, to watch it and see the production value of it. And we get the NFL in Europe, but the NFL in South America, like that's what the fan reaction will be like. It'll be very interesting.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to week 17 Monday Night Football, Lions at San Francisco 49ers. A rematch there. Like and it's week 17. Like that's gonna be
juicy. Last Monday Night Football game
matchup, and it's going to matter a lot. Like we know it's going to matter a lot.
That could be the 1 seed.
Maybe they're competing for the 1 seed. Yeah, they very well.
Good call. Good call.
A lot on the line there. So I think that's pretty epic. Monday Night Football to watch out there. But that has been our recap of the NFL schedule release. Hope you all enjoyed it. Appreciate you sticking with us every week throughout the year. And these past 4 years been wild. So we'll continue to roll with OTAs and then training camp around the corner and all of that fun stuff to come in the coming weeks. But as always, you can find us over at FB Lounge Pod, anywhere you get your social media. Check us out at forfantasysakeqc.com. All of the other great shows on the For Frequency Sake Podcast Network. But that'll do it for us here today. We'll see you next time.